Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Summer Lagrace on the podcast with us. She's coming to us all the way from Memphis, Tennessee. She has her bachelor's degree, I should say, in biology and chemistry. Most importantly, she's also a competitor, and we'd love to have her come on and share our story. But most importantly, Summer, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired you and motivated you to make that change and adapt that healthy and fit lifestyle?
Okay. So, my whole life I grew up, I was playing basketball. My coaches had me in the gym, 6:00 in the morning, practicing. And then, during school hours, we were always in the gym. And I actually hated lifting weights because I was made to lift weights while I was in high school. But once I got out, I got into college and everything else, I just kind of started working out, and I was dating this guy, and pretty much if I wanted to hang out with him, I had to go to the gym. So, I kind of just started off like doing a little program in which, I was held accountable. And so I was only working out like 3 or 4 days in the gym. And sometimes it was just, I hated it, to be honest. I just kept on grinding. It was like a 12-week program. And then one day, like maybe took about 2 months. One day I just woke up and I was like, oh, I'm so excited. Like I get to go to the gym today. So that was kind of like the turning point for me, like just falling in love with the gym. And then from there, I think I worked out for a while, probably about 6 or 8 months. And then I don't really tell a lot of people this, but my niece, she ended up committing suicide.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was really hard. She was 13, and she looked up to me. I mean, we were only like 7 years apart in age, and she always looked up to me for like being healthy. And I competed in Miss Tennessee a long time ago, and she would always go to school and she would be like, oh, my niece or my aunt is in Miss Tennessee, blah, blah, blah. So she always like admired me for that. So when that happened, I drowned in myself in the gym. Like that was my only like get away from life. It was the only thing that I felt like I had control over. And from there, I kind of just was like, you know what? I'm going to compete, because it kind of mixed her being like admiring me for like, being into pageants. By the way, I am not a girly girl whatsoever. I'm a tomboy. I just like to dress up every now and then. So either way, I just thought, I'm going to do this for her. And because if she was here, I felt like, she would admire me for that, and she'd look up to me for that. So that's kind of where I got started. Didn't know how I was going to do. I just kind of got up there, and oh Lord, I look back at my routines now and I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking? But after my first show, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the sport, and it's incredible how it can change people's lives, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with that, and I always love to make the statement. I mean, if you were to walk into a gym with 100 different people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to, their diet, their training, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercise they do. So many little things add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. Was that a struggle for you at first, sort of finding out what worked best for your body individually? Because I always like to say, if you were to walk up to someone and say like, hey, what did you train for this body part? This body part looks amazing. What worked best for them? 99% of the time is not going to work as good for you.
No. It's very individualized. And the biggest thing I see with like the girls that I coach, women, it's hard. Mine has been more so my diet. That's been the hardest thing for me. I love going to the gym. I love lifting weight. Cardio doesn't bother me anymore because, God forsaken, I've just had to do tons of it. Yep. But diet's the hardest part. So when I got started off, I knew the diet was going to be the hardest for me. So I just took it very slowly. Like I started working out. I started learning to enjoy that. Not trying to learn like all of these fancy workouts, because really the basics are what get you where you need to go. I mean, all this little fancy, let's put a little kick to this and do a little thing with this. It's like, it's just, there's no point. There's no point in a lot of that stuff. So
I couldn't agree more. 100%. Yeah. I mean I see that all the time, where it's like the old school workouts, they've been working for hundreds of years to get people into shape.
There's a reason why too.
There's a reason. Yeah. There's a reason why, push-ups, sit-ups, all those, things. And we've had people on here that, just do some of that. And we had someone that actually then tried to compete like that and actually did fairly well. So it's like, there's a reason why those old school things they've been doing them for thousands of years, I should say. People have been doing just those body weight things. But
Mhm.
I see that all the time too. And I'm thinking, I was like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel works. So it's just like,
Exactly.
I couldn't agree more with you on that. That also brings up, we were talking a little bit about genetics in the podcast that I was previously doing. So when it
Mhm.
comes to genetics, I love asking this question because everyone always seems to have that one body part that really takes off, that they don't have to train as much. And then everyone always seems to have that one body part that they really struggle with, that they need to sort of train to overdrive. What were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
Um, my glutes, man. Like during school, I was the girl. Like my butt, it went straight down, and it like caved in. It didn't cave out. I didn't have a butt, and so now I go back and I talk to my friends who used to have big butts in high school, and they're like, "Oh my god, you're getting a big butt," and I'm like, "I'll take that as a compliment." But I have a very muscular build in general. So my upper body, I tend to put on size super easy. My shoulders, I have very broad shoulders. So genetically, just my broad shoulders, I can put on size in my shoulders just like that. And thank God, I was gifted with, well, when I'm really lean, my waist can get really, really small. I really can. But yeah, I think genetics have a lot to do with how well you can do in the sport. I mean, um, as far as like becoming a pro and getting to the Olympian level and stuff like that, genetics, I mean, you can take your body as far as you want to, and you can look the best that you can look. But if you don't have the genetics to play the part in that, then I hate to be like this, but you're not going to get where you want to go. So
I mean, again, I couldn't agree more with you on that. It is one of those things where the genetics play such a huge role in that. And I mean, I love having that answer too, because shoulders for all the women that I have on are probably the number one area where they just can't get it to work. But then, it works both ways, where there are some that, just genetically, it's like, hey, it really takes off for me. I mean, my back, I could train back, once every 6 months and it would still look
yeah,
really, really good. But also I'm 6'3", so my legs, my
really.
entire lower body is just, I got to train it twice a week. So it's just, yeah, and I was a pitcher too in high school. So I mean, I had that natural pitcher's body where you're supposed to be long and lean and have a little bit of a decent lower body. But my biggest pet peeve is people with the big calves, with just the genetically huge calves.
Because you're so tall, you can't grow them.
I'm so tall, I can't grow them. I always say, I could do 10,000 calf raises every single day. I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't even grow. It's just one of those things. Yeah. So I see these people that sometimes, that they have just those naturally, just genetically big calves. And I just think, maybe someday they'll invent some technology. But yeah, other than that, yeah, there's.
Hey, they make stuff for that. They
Hey,
make
no calf implants. It's
yeah.
gonna be all natural down there. But I just gotta find some. Yeah, but yeah, it's one of those things where I just look at that and I'm just like, oh, come on now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now, I mean, I always love to ask, if you were to poll the general public, there's just going to be a small singular percentage of people that would basically be willing to go up on stage and pose in a bikini in front of people. I mean, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of determination.
Oh, for
Was that
sure.
something that you ever had to work on, sort of to convince yourself to be able to go and do that? Or did it get to a point where, for like a lot of our guests that we have on, where they worked their butt off for so long that they just wanted to go on stage and just show it off? What was that like
Oh
for you?
no. Like I love the fact of like getting all like glitzy and pretty or whatever, but it doesn't matter how many times I've stepped on that stage because I've been competing for like, oh God, 4 years and I've done tons of shows. It does not matter. I still, when I'm waiting in that line and I know I'm fixing to be like get in front of a ton of people, I freak out. Even with basketball, when we were fixing to like run out, to do our warm up, I was like, "Oh my god, I don't know if I can do this." So yeah, I get very nervous. I get very nervous.
Yeah. And I mean, I was the same guy too. Whenever I'd run out into the mound before a big game, yeah, I'd be feeling those nerves 110%.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But
And so much for me too. Like for bikini, um, so much is dependent upon when you walk out on that stage and how your routine goes, how your transitions are, where your hair is. So you prep so long for a show, and then it can be taken away from you within those 10 seconds of being on stage. So that's why I always harp to people, your routine and your posing is just as important as your 20 weeks of training leading up to a show. And, for bodybuilding, that's a little bit different. Obviously, on the back end, that's where all the work's done. And you can just get to kind of go out there and present yourself and you kind of can relax. But For bikini, it's totally different. I mean, it's still a beauty pageant up on stage alongside, having that fit, lean, physique, and just everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect.
Yeah, it really is. It's just like a lot of other things in life, though, too, where, I mean, like you said, it has to be perfect. You have to have everything down pat. But one of the things that I love to talk about, because it is not discussed as much as I think it should be, but the number one surprise that I had when I started this segment of the podcast, when I started doing a lot of the bodybuilders, is that for a lot of these bodybuilders, posing is the hardest thing for them. It's
It really
harder.
is.
It's harder than their nutrition. It's harder than their working out. And I mean, like you said, you have a posing client that you're going to have coming up after you're done talking to me with, because posing is just so important. I always like to make the comparison. I mean, you can be a great driver. You can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser. You can never be a perfect poser.
Yeah.
It is something that is always ever evolving. What has your experience been like with posing when you were started out, and how has that sort of evolved? Has posing gotten to a thing where it's been easier for you, or has it always been just a huge struggle?
Um, I pick up on posing very, very quickly, but it's one of those things you have to continuously practice, and you have to continuously look in the mirror and see what angles look good on you, because you might start off looking one way, and then as you get leaner and leaner and leaner, you really need to tweak your posing. And so that's what I always harp to girls. And I travel around to do like big clinics, and I'm actually working on like a huge project that's going to help a lot of girls with different body types be able to assess their bodies more accurately so they can figure out how they need to pose. So anyways, that's a huge project I'm working on. Hopefully that's going to, roll out within the next couple of months. But either way, posing is so hard, and people tend to neglect it so much because girls get on stage, they watch it, and they're like, oh my God, this looks so easy. Like, it'll be fine. And then they get up, they put heels on, and they're typically, these girls who compete, they don't wear heels on a daily basis. So they put those heels on, they're like, oh crap. And then they start posing, and they're like, wow, this is a lot harder than what I thought it was. And so that's why I always tell people, like, 20 weeks out, you need to start posing. You really need to start posing, because if you can't get up there and make it look like natural, if you make it look awkward, the judges are going to they're going to feel awkward. And if the judges feel awkward to look at you because you're being awkward, they're going to score you down. They want to look at poise. They want to look at eloquence. They want it to look natural, and they want it to look pretty. And if you can't get up there and you can't display that, then you're probably not going to win. You're not going to win, especially on a national level stage when everybody's posing is absolutely perfect. You stand no chance.
I always love to say, if you could be the most in shape person on the planet, if you don't know how to pose, you don't have a chance. I mean, it's definitely one of those things that, I mean, I love to bring up, because a lot of times they see these people, and like you were talking about, they think, oh, that's easy, I can just go up and do it naturally.
Oh, yeah.
You also have to have your own flair, basically, especially for bikini posing. You have to have your own sort of sass. You have to sort of work on. But since you said, I mean, you work a lot, I mean, with a lot of women, what would you say overall, if you were to just take the average woman who's, dieted and really, got into shape, what would you say for women overall the hardest pose to teach them is?
The correct way to do a back pose. The correct way to do a back pose, because a lot of these girls, they get up there and the point for a back pose is to draw attention to the glutes. So a lot of these girls, they'll stand straight up and down, and it won't draw attention to the glute area, or they'll move their hair and then it'll draw attention to their like lean, ripped, cut up back, or they'll just place their arms in ways in which it's taking away attention from the glutes. So it's very much so, it's individualized on the person. And, a lot of times these girls, they get up there and they think, oh, wow, maybe if I bend over more, then we can see the lines in my hamstrings a lot more. And they get up there and it's just, oh my gosh, you just see straight up. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. And I get so embarrassed for people to do that. I'm like, just stand up, bend over slightly, but just stand there, because when you get up there, your nerves are so like shot anyways, you're going to over exaggerate anything you do. So the straighter you can like stand when you practice, the straighter you'll stand up when you get up on stage. So That's the biggest thing.
Well, it's all about practice too. I mean, I can't tell you how many times. I mean, for a lot of people too, the hardest thing is making it look effortless, especially not just gritting your teeth and not making it look like, you know, it's just a huge struggle. That is by far, I mean, one of the hardest things that we've definitely had to talk about on the podcast when it comes to, you know, the struggles that people have. And, you know, heels is another huge thing too. I mean, my second guest that I had on, she was 6'3" and she was about 6'8" in those heels. So I was like, that's like imagining me out there in those heels. You know, that would be first of all, that would be an absolute disaster. And I always said,
that should be your next YouTube video. We should get you in some heels.
Yeah, that would be a sight. That would be a sight to see. And I always said, if you wanted to break the internet, have the guys come out in high heels when they come out and do their posing routine. That would be hilarious to see in and of itself. But another thing with the posing that I really think a lot of people don't realize, it also comes down to the judging too, because bikini is such a wide open division where, I mean, you have judges that like the more muscular look, you have judges that like the, you know, the little bit more, I'm not going to say, I have to say though, toned, even though, you know, tone is such a stupid word that I think a lot of people, it doesn't really mean, but they like the less muscular look. How have you in your competition history sort of dealt with the fact that, I mean, it really does depend on what the judge prefers, because you could come into a show and you could be really, really in great shape, but if it's not the package that the judge is looking for, then that doesn't really matter.
One of my clients this past year, she did North Americans and she placed second. She missed her pro card by 1, and then she turned around and she did the Olympia Amateur, and she placed. Oh gosh, she's gonna hate me. She got 4th or 5th. I don't know, but it was a different judging panel, same head judge, but I always tell people, you just have to go into it going into it looking your best. But I will say, I kind of base the shows that I do based upon who the judges are. I've noticed, you know, a lot. I kind of have like that happy medium build. I'm not super grainy. I don't have really super defined abs. So typically like Sandy, who is the head judge for almost every single national show, that's the look that she likes. Steve Weinberger, I mean, he likes a more muscular look, and I don't typically present that. It depends on how lean I am. So yeah, I mean, like picking your shows based upon who the judges are, you definitely have to take that into consideration, because so many of these girls, they let where they place determine who they are. I always tell them, I'm just like, you know, it's so subjective. Bikini is so subjective. The top 10 girls at any national show, they all could have been first place. They all could be pros. It just depends on what the judges like on that day.
Absolutely. It's subjective, just like a lot of other sports. But I always love to ask, you know, just to be able to get into shape to go on to a prep takes so much hard work and determination and dedication and just, you know, punishing yourself constantly in the gym. But going on a prep, that is notching things up to an extreme level when it comes down to, I mean, you got to get all of your workouts in. You got to eat the right amount of food at the right amount of time, almost exactly. How was that experience like for you? I mean, going from, you know, getting into the shape to get into a prep to all of a sudden going into a prep where everything is just so like dialed down and everything has to be perfect.
So my first year competing, I had no idea what I was getting into. So I was just like, oh, okay, this is cool. This is fun, you know, whatever. And then after I realized I did really good, I started taking it so serious. And I mean, the coach I was working with last year, every single like gram, ounce, every single thing he told me to do, it's a lot. It is a lot. And what I tell people is just always just take your head out of it, because it's going to be rough. But once you get there, it's the most rewarding feeling ever.
And when it always comes down to the fact that I always say, you know, like with the young generation, they want it now and they want it yesterday. They're not willing to put in the weight that comes in. So I always say to that, you know, I like comparing it to like if you were to talk to someone who is an alcoholic and someone who's trying to lose weight. If you're an alcoholic and you go one day without drinking, you've already made significant progress. Where if you go to the gym for one day, you know, you're going to look in the mirror and say, oh, I lost 1/100th of a pound. You know, I'm really on the right track, you know. So it's one of those things where it takes so much more determination and willpower. But once you do see those changes, I mean, it really just can take you into a rabbit hole where you just realize like, hey, this is amazing. But one of the big stereotypes that I love to bust on this podcast. It's gotten better with Instagram the last 5 years, but there are still so many women that believe if they touch one weight, they're just gonna Hulk out and put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. Yep, I get that reaction all the time because it is still it is
it drives me crazy.
It is still so prevalent as much as I would love for it not to be. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, like we can tell from your reaction, you hear that all the time. What do you respond to that whenever you hear that?
Oh my God, I just can't even handle it sometimes. I just start laughing. I just start laughing because it frustrates me so much that I just have to start laughing. When people tell me that though, they're like, oh, I want to get into working out, but I don't want to gain too much muscle. I'm like, sweetheart, I've been working out for 6 years and I still am not where I want to be. And you see how big I am. And so either way, I'm just like, cool. Well, if you really want to if you're scared to look like a man, then just don't take any steroids and then you're fine. Like you're a woman. You're not supposed to put on a lot of size. You won't put on a lot of size. If anything, it's just gonna, I don't even know, like that that is my one pet peeve when people say anything they just have no idea.
I always love to tell a story of when I was in college, getting bigger and stronger. One of my really good friends, she'd come up to me and she'd say, Ryan, I want to go to the gym. I see that you're getting bigger and stronger, but I don't want to get, bulky. And it finally got to the point where I one day just told her, I said, look, the amount of weight that you carry in your purse when we go to clubs or when we go out to eat weighs more than a lot of the dumbbells in the gym. And you are not gaining an ounce of muscle from lugging that thing around 24/7.
I love it. That is so true.
Yeah. And she said, she goes, oh yeah, I guess so. And I always tell people that when I hear that too, I was like, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to get healthier. 100%. That's why I love bringing that up, because it's one of those myths that I love to bust. But also, probably the biggest benefit, especially for women, more so than in men, I'd say, is the confidence boost that it gives you. Just the confidence boost in and of itself. Could you explain kind of how that affected you? Because it's one of those things, that confidence is one of those intangible things that you can take not just from working out, but it applies to everything else in your life. How has that confidence really affected your everyday life?
I typically see that, like, when I go into the gym, a lot of men they think, I'll just be very blunt, they think they're hot, they think they know it all when they're getting there and they're lifting weights. And for a woman to be able to go in there and stand her own, it has helped me just have a lot more self-confidence and be a lot more just comfortable in my own skin, because this is a day and age where women are very very independent. And I'm even in a position with my company in which I manage a lot of people. I manage a lot of men, and so it kind of helps me, I don't know, feel like I am entitled to the position that I'm in, even though I am a woman.
Yeah. And when that brings me up, I was honestly going to ask this when I heard that you had your own company, because I had a conversation. I won't say where my job is at right now just to protect the identity, but one of my bosses was talking about, she's a woman too, and she's talking about how much of a struggle it is sometimes to get the male subordinates to do stuff, because some of them are a little bit older and they have that old school mentality where it's weird taking orders from that. Have you found that to be a similar thing, and how do you sort of overcome that?
Honestly, I was actually talking with a lady last night about this, but I feel like, for one, if you're going to talk the talk, you better be able to back it up. So I make sure that I'm always on my P's and Q's when it comes to anything. But I've just noticed, like, if I show them that I know what I'm talking about and don't try to belittle them and just seem like I'm there as support and like befriend them, they've taken to me a lot better than some other women who have been in my position, who just, they are a woman and they think that, oh, I have to show these men who's boss. So they try to come across very overbearing and very, just independent and strong. And it's sometimes it's just a little too much. It's a little too much. So just coming in on a more humble perspective, being a woman, I think it's more respected, for sure.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I mean I take for granted every day because I'm in management, so just I take that for granted all the time. When I finally step back and watch like my boss start to talk to them, I realize that it is a total complete difference, and you kind of have to watch a little bit more of what you say. And it's just yeah, it's one of the things that made me appreciate what she does even more, just realizing what she has to go through as opposed to what I have to go through. But now going back to competing, I mean I always love to ask, I mean whether it be the up and coming musicians and bands that I have on my show or the competitors that I have for my bands, I always love to ask what is that feeling like performing live and being on stage and performing in front of all these people, but also for my competitors, what is that feeling like for you when like we said, you've dieted down for so long and you put your body through basically a living hell, which is prep, which I love, I mean, in the best way possible. But what is that feeling like for you when you get to step on stage and finally show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months for?
Oh, I tell myself 4 weeks out from a show, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so over this. I just want to be done. I'm tired. I'm miserable. I'm like killing myself. Like, this isn't even worth it. And then right when I'm fixing to step on stage, I'm like, I forget every single negative feeling I've ever had about the sport or my diet or the food that I've eaten or all the asparagus that I've eaten, and it is the most amazing feeling in the world. I feel so accomplished. I mean, even, trophy or no trophy, placing or no placing, like it's a huge deal to be able to step on that stage and say that you did what you endured that process for sure.
One of the things that really gets me though is the fact that I mean you're only on the stage for some of these people. They're only on the stage for like 30 seconds to a minute at the most. When I talk
Yeah,
to my bands, I mean these guys are on there for like an hour and a half to like 2 hours sometimes,
that's
and
true.
and it brings up a fact that I mean you cannot mess up really once if you're on the stage for a minute because then everyone's gonna notice that you did do that one mess up. Whereas like if I were
Oh
to
yeah.
mess up here on this podcast, not that many people would notice. If I mess up once, not that many people would notice because it's such a long podcast. But how do you deal with that pressure that like knowing that if you're on there for such a short amount of time, people just have that much of more of their focus on you?
Oh man, that's the thing. It still gets to me. It really does. And, that's why even with a lot of my girls, I'm like, just calm down. The calmer you can be, the better you will present yourself and the less likely you will be to mess up. So it's really hard for me to just sit there and calm myself. But, I try to sit in the back. I lay down. I put my feet up. Like I listen to podcasts, and just try to relax and take my mind off of everything, because I know, for women, once you get backstage, like you look around and you see all these girls and they're all beautiful and they're all fit, and like you start comparing yourself, and so it just heightens your nerves, and it's no good. I mean, you can't focus on anybody else except yourself. And if you can calm yourself and know that you've done the best that you could possibly do to get up there on that stage, then you are so much more likely to do well.
It's kind of like the fake it till you make it mentality, where you got to fake like everything's like looking good and everything's copacetic with you, even though like I've had
Mhm.
times too where I was talking about where I walked out onto the mountain, my legs were shaking, but I was trying my hardest not to make it look like my legs were shaking
I don't
when I was walking out
know.
there. Yep, I don't want anyone else to know. But now, I mean, that brings me up to one of my most important questions that I love to ask everyone, because again, like a lot of other things, it's not brought up that much on
Yeah.
Instagram or any other platforms. But I'll give an example. So I was at a New Year's Eve party, and one of my friends came up to me and said, like Ryan, I love watching your podcast. I mean, it's so interesting. But one of the things, he's a weightlifter as well, and one of the things that he said that he was really shocked by is that a lot of these competitors, sometimes they give the illusion that that is a sustainable look, that when they're on stage, that is a look that you can keep for more than the one day that they keep it. Where a lot of the first time competitors that I have on, that is a huge shock for them after their first competition, when they realize like, hey, no matter what, I am going to have to put on weight. Like it is not a sustainable look that I have,
Yeah.
because you've manipulated your body through all the hard work and dedication and dieting into a look that you're not going to be able to keep. And a lot of people, a lot of them get like anxious, they get depressed, knowing that all this hard work
Yeah.
that I put months upon months for, I'm eventually going to have to put on weight. Was that a struggle for you at all, starting out? And even with the people that you deal with, what are some tips that you give them in order so that they don't go crazy just thinking of like all this hard work that I did, I am going to have to put on weight?
Um, I have a couple of different things I want to say upon that, because it has definitely been a struggle for me. Huge struggle. I actually made a post about that today. Just I'm naturally not very lean. I'm naturally a muscular person. I can put on weight easy and I can get off weight pretty easy. But a lot of these people that step on stage and do really well, and keep this look all year round, it's not because they diet all year round to look this way. They are just naturally that lean. And a lot of these girls compare themselves to those women. And I'm like, that's 5% of the population that competes. So like 0.00005% of the population in general. So I always tell people, because once you start competing, like you want to compete every single year. And the girls that are naturally more muscular and everything else, you need to put on body fat. You need to put on, size just in general and eat more so that you can put on the muscular size that you need to be able to compete again. And so a lot of these people, they'll try to sit there and they'll stay lean and they won't make any progress. And that was my biggest issue this year, because last year, I won like 3 overalls and I came in and I did like my second national show and I missed my pro card by 1 spot. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm just right there. I'm right there. So my mentality was, I'm going to stay as lean as I can. And I'm going to just coast into next year. And that's what I did. I stayed super, super lean. And then when I came in on stage and I compared my pictures from last year versus the show I did this past year, Junior USA's, by staying so lean the entire time, I wasn't able to put on muscle. And honestly, I lost muscle because of it. So people think that putting on size and putting on weight is such a bad thing, but it's not. And it is absolutely necessary to put on that amount of weight for you to be able to put on, the muscular development that you need in order to further yourself in the sport, in the grand scheme of things. So now I'm kind of to that point where I've realized that. And I've had to put on size. I've had to put on weight. Obviously, you can see it in my cheeks right now.
Oh, believe me, yeah.
Oh, so like I've just now gotten to a point where I'm very comfortable with my body, and I know in order to get where I want to be, I have to have this size right now, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So and it's just hard when you go from being in the supposedly the best shape of your life, being on stage, which it's not the best shape of your life. People try to portray, this nice lean look is so healthy. It's actually very, very, very unhealthy and unsustainable. So anybody who, first starts off competing, they just think, oh my gosh, once I get here, I'm going to stay here. And it's just, that's not the reality of things. And usually it takes a couple times of you like binging hard or not reversing, for you to really realize that this is just, it's not sustainable.
Believe me, I totally get the weight gain, but I have it because being up in Minnesota when it's like -5 degrees like it is now, you need to put on, that 10 to 15 pounds of fat during the winter just to be able to survive, because if you're that lean and you walk outside, you're not going to have a fun time at all. So yeah, no. I totally understand that. But now we go to one of my fun questions. What is your go-to post-show meal?
Oh my God. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's think. I love donuts. Probably a burger and fries and donuts.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite flavor of donut?
Oh man, I'm plain. I'm so plain. I love glazed donuts.
I love glazed too, but bear claws are probably my favorite type of any of the donuts.
Well, hey, yeah. You know what? Post show, like I don't discriminate. Mm-hmm. Oh, also Reese cups. Like,
yes.
Yes. That's my weakness. And boy, I tell you what, when I walk into Kroger or Walmart and I see like those Reese's eggs or like Reese's pumpkins and I'm in prep, I'm just like, because it's like buy 2, get 1 free. And I'm like, I wish that it was like buy 2 and get the 3rd one free in calories. Like, oh, if I could have 2 for this amount of calories, can the 3rd one be free in calories too? But no, anyways, that's probably my biggest weakness.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that all the time. For me, I always said I would probably go to like a Five Guys if I ever competed and just, pig out. But now 2 of my favorite questions that I love to ask, all of my health and fitness guests that I have on. For the first one, when I started getting bigger and stronger in college, there's so many positive things that came from that. But the one negative thing for me is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents for the next few months before I move out, and they still, every time they come home with groceries, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway. Has that been a similar experience with you where people just take one look at you or they know that you compete, where they assume that you can do favors like that for them?
Oh, yeah, and I love it, too. Mm-hmm. Anytime somebody asks me to, like, pick up something, I'm like, I got this. Or just the reverse, when people are like, oh, you're a girl, let me lift that. I'll look at them and I'll be like, excuse you?
Mhm.
And then I'll make sure that I'm the one who lifts it anyways.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I love that because for me, I mean, it's always a double-edged sword for me though, being that tall where they take one look at me and they say, "Oh, tall guy can do it," and then having the muscles. But it got to a point where I've accepted it. So yeah, now whenever I get asked, I say, I tell them though, I say, as long as I get to work out before I help you move you, because I do not want to get too tired from moving you that I'm not able to then get a workout in. So that's the one thing I say to them. But now, I mean, my favorite question to ask, and again, this is a multi-million-dollar idea for anyone out there. But when it
Uh,
comes to clothes for fit women, your clothing options can be limited. I mean, when the second you said, that your shoulders grow really, really quickly, I said, my number one thing is that when you have big, broad shoulders, dresses sometimes aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we
yep,
hear of all the time that could be a huge struggle. What are some
yep.
ways that you sort of compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be limited, and for your clients too? What do you recommend for them just so that they don't go crazy or get like sad when they go shop at any average
Oh,
like
Lord.
retail store?
So I have learned the only pants that I wear. Well, I'm sponsored by Celestial Bodies,
Mhm.
and so a lot of her clothing, I will just wear. I'll put on a different pair of leggings and I'll just wear them out. And so a lot of her clothes are very. You can dress them up and you can make them look like it's just a complete outfit. So I wear leggings pretty much all the time, and if I don't wear leggings, I wear Freddies. Freddie jeans. They're expensive, but they are literally the best investment ever. I have like every single pair, and I can never go back to regular jeans because none of them ever fit me right.
Yep, I hear that all the time. Like, I'll give it a story. So I came back from college one time, and I went to a friend's wedding, and I had gained about 15 pounds of muscle the first year. So I went down to go pick something up, and I heard zzz, and luckily it was the
Oh,
shirt.
yep.
It was the shirt. It was not the suit. So I lucked out big time on that one. But then that's when I sort of realized, like, hey, I need to upgrade my wardrobe a little bit. But now we go down to our final two questions before we wrap things up here. I love to ask these to all of our guests that we have on the show. Well, actually,
Mhm.
I'll add one of my questionnaire questions onto this. So for the one questionnaire question that I would really like to add on at the end here is, so if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
Oh me. Um, as far as fitness or just in general.
Either way.
Oh gosh. I would probably go back because I I spent so much time trying to accommodate for other people that I really stopped looking at what was best for myself. And if I could go back, I would tell myself, focus on you, get where you need to be, get in a happy place, get yourself set up where you want to be, and then take it from there. I was just one of those people. I was always very independent. I moved out the day I turned 18, pretty much. I got my own place. I started working, going to college, and I wish I would have been just a little bit smarter and not been so darn stubborn. And just try to, well, in general, just try to focus on myself and get ahead first before I have to take a back burner by getting in relationships and doing any of that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
that would be my biggest advice.
I would say that 100% to anyone out there listening. I mean, I was a huge people pleaser back then, just realizing that not everyone's gonna dig your vibe, not everyone's gonna get it. So you
Yep,
don't try to go the extra mile to try to please everyone, because believe me, it is gonna end up being an absolute waste of time. But now,
exactly.
I mean, I always love to ask. So do you have a next show plan in mind, and when you're gonna compete next? Or are you currently just in like a rebuilding phase? What are you currently
Um,
at right now?
so after, like I said, this year of just me not putting on the size that I needed to, I'm really just trying. I've had a hard time of with the reverse and not being so lean. So I'm just trying to get, and I've created over the years having such a bad relationship to food, and a lot of people won't admit that, but I don't care. Um, I've noticed that so many girls they have terrible relationships with food, and I used to not. Before I started competing, I wouldn't even care about food. I didn't obsess about it, and now it's just it's on my mind all the time, and I know like with going up and down and up and down and competing and not prepping and this that and the other, like I would think that there's just this small window of time in which I better eat everything that I can because I'm fixing to not be able to have it again. So right now, I'm just currently trying to build a healthy relationship with food, eat healthy because I enjoy eating healthy. I love eating healthy, but then again, I love eating bad too, and I like going out and I like enjoying meals out with friends and stuff like that. So I'm at a point in my life where I'm trying to get my weight down. to a happy weight, but not track every single little thing that goes into my mouth because I become very OCD when it comes to prep. So my goal is to just get my weight down to that happy medium. My competition weight's here, my like highest weight's here. I want to be right in the middle of me not being so strict on myself before I go into another prep.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I completely agree, and I mean, I'm actually having one of my cheat meals later. I know this sounds really, really stupid being how cold it is, but I go to Dairy Queen, I get one of those large cookie dough blizzards, and
ooh,
just go to town. I get the extra cookie dough in it too. Yeah, I absolutely love it. So yeah,
love
I'm
it.
doing that later tonight. But now for our last question, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to, or also where can people find you in your business if they need help with posing, or if they need just any general overall advice? Other than your Instagram, is there any other way that people could contact you?
So you can also email me. It's chunkybumpfitness@gmail.com. But typically, the best way for you to get in touch with me would be my Instagram, which is, Sum.Bum.Fit. Um, Shout out. Let's see. I could be here all day. My sponsors for sure. I'm sponsored by Rule One Proteins. They are absolutely amazing. And like I said, I'm a huge foodie. So when it comes to like flavor and taste, like I have to have the best flavors. So me staying like solo for a while, trying to figure out who I wanted to be with and work with. I finally came across Rule One Proteins, and boy, did I reached out to them for like a year straight. I'm like, hey, you looking for any athletes? Hey, you looking for any athletes? And boy, I just wouldn't leave them alone until they finally were like, okay, we're just going to let this girl be an athlete because she's just never going to leave us alone. Hey, it worked. It's all about persistence, all about persistence. And so either way, them, and then obviously Celestial Bodies. I have the greatest sponsors ever. Greatest sponsors ever. They're so good to me. Both of them they're just amazing. Absolutely amazing companies to be able to work with.
And I gotta say, that's one of the big benefits too that you need to look into is get good sponsors too, especially if you're competing, because they can make your life so much easier. They can make all
Yeah.
of the hard work and training so much easier. But lastly, if someone were to walk up to you on the street and say like, "Oh my God, wow, you look amazing. I want to sort of adapt a more healthy and fit lifestyle," what would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give them in order for them to just be able to get that a good head start and just be able to start with their journey?
I always tell people don't compare your journey to anybody else's. Make sure that you're always happy with what you're doing. Know that you're not going to be perfect 100% of the time. So don't be so hard on yourself. Just take everything slowly because a lot of times people will just go from 0 to 100 and then they'll just burn out so fast instead of adapting a healthy lifestyle over a period of time. So instead of saying, I have to go to the gym, every single day, say, hey, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week and I'm going to make those 3 times a week whenever I can fit it in. As long as I have it done within that week's, time span, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Or, especially the food part. Like, hey, if I mess up on my diet, like it's okay. It's normal. Like that happens. But so many times people they'll mess up on their diet and they're like, well, screwed everything up. And then it's just a downhill effect from there. Instead of doing that, I always say, it's okay. Get over it. It's normal. Just get back on the plan and you will be fine.
I cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast, Summer. I mean, you were an absolute delight to talk to, and everyone,
Aw.
go and give her a follow. We highly recommend it. I mean, especially if you want to go out and stop eating all those Twinkies and go and get off the couch every once in a while, go and give her a follow. But again, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so